Elephant in the room? Yeah, the Project X isn't a PlayStation Portal. Normally I'd use the word inspired by, but the Project X Retro Handheld isn't so much inspired by more than it is outright copyright infringement. Coming in at just $30, the Project X is as super budget as they come. Its list of issues is long enough to fill an end credits scene, but in spite of this, the Project X manages to offer up enough that justifies its purchase. It won't rival the best retro handhelds out there, but if you're after a way to get into emulation without breaking the bank, or if you want something affordable for the kids, the Project X is a solid place to start. Before I get into this, I do need to stress there are a lot of things wrong with the Project X handheld. In fact, almost every element of the Project X has at least one downside. But we need to keep in mind this is a $30 device, so it's worth keeping that in perspective at all times. It's cheap and it's designed cheaply, so all these different elements need balancing before you make any decisions. Okay, let's get into it. Have you ever seen those mass-produced $1 toys in random shops? That's how the Project X feels. It's sturdy, for sure, but the plastic feels, well, cheap because it is. That's going to be a running theme here as well. At this price point, you're not going to get that premium feel found in the likes of the Odin 2 or the Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. What I will say is despite the trashy feel, the Project X is deceptively comfortable. That pseudo PS5 handle fits snugly in the hand. And while the triggers aren't large enough to hang over the console, like with others, they're easily pressable and that's what matters. The 4 face buttons themselves offer up a decent amount of bounce and don't move in the case. They are perhaps a little high when compared with other devices, but it won't be a problem for most. The D-pad, however, is one of the worst I have ever used. Not only does each directional button move in the case, they're also far too high. I tried playing Street Fighter 2 to get an idea of how well those directions translate, and the results were shameful. Trying to perform a fluid quarter circle input, for those who don't play fighting games that's down, diagonal towards, and then towards, simply isn't possible. Out of 40 attempts with the D-pad, only one input was able to fully register what I was trying to do. Performing my quarter circle input once again with the sticks, I was able to hit 1 in every 20 attempts, which is an improvement over the D-pad, but still rubbish compared to literally every other handheld I've reviewed. And that's a real shame, because the sticks actually feel great. They're concave so your thumb rests in the stick rather than on top of it like with Switch controllers, and the small grooves let you know where your finger is resting. The upside, if you can call it that, is that it's only really fighting games that are affected by the poor design. Platformers, shooters, racing games, those will all work with minimal issues. The Project X makes use of the ATM 7051 processor alongside 2GB of RAM. To put this in perspective, I'd place it somewhere between the TrimUI Smart and the Miyoo Mini Plus in terms of power. What that looks like in action is up to PS1 is possible, although PS1 is pushing it a little too hard. For example, I was able to play Tekken 3, but the sound constantly cracked and performance wasn't fluid. So for me, this isn't a PS1 device. If you're after smooth PS1 performance, I'd still go with something like the Miyoo Mini Plus for $70 or the Anbernic RG35XX Plus, which is $61. Both of those devices offer solid performance, but they are pricier obviously, and they're not horizontal handhelds, they're verticals. So where exactly does the Project X excel? That would be in 16-bit and below. SNES, Mega Drive Genesis, Game Boy Advance and anything below can run at mostly full speed with minimal issues. Although I did find a problem with certain games simply crashing or freezing when you try to load them. Most will work, but don't expect 100% playability. Again, it's a $30 handheld. The screen itself is also super washed out, so colours don't pop as much as they should, but having reviewed other devices from this same bracket, the screen quality is good enough. All of this leads me to the following question. What is the Project X's secret weapon? That would be the screen. That same screen, while imperfect, is also the Project X's strong suit. Normally with horizontal retro handhelds, companies opt for a 16:9 ratio. While that looks great on paper, when it comes to systems that utilise a 4:3 aspect ratio, you're left with massive black bars on either side of the screen, and frankly, it looks terrible. Where the Project X differs from everything else out there is through the use of an 800 by 480 display, which works out to a 5:3 aspect ratio, meaning the black bars on either side of the picture are much smaller, or, if you choose to increase the size to fill the void, it doesn't look overstretched. It fits the screen almost perfectly. If memory serves, this is the first handheld I've reviewed that has used this aspect ratio, and it's a smart choice. Normally handhelds either come in 16:9 or 4:3, so seeing one that fixes the problem of black bars on a larger screen makes the Project X a joy to play on, believe it or not. If, like me, you end up with a Project X that ships in Chinese, click on the gear settings icon, then the fourth option down will be the language settings, albeit in Mandarin. Click on that, then the word English, and you're good to actually start playing it in a language you'll understand. I have played with a lot of different operating systems over the years, from Steam Deck to ANEO to pretty much every version of Linux in between. The Project X's operating system isn't as ugly as something like the TrimUI Smart, but it's also sluggish and incredibly generic. Emulators are front and center, which is great for ease of use, but it does feel like everything has been shoved onto the screen without any real care. There's also the bizarre choice to have the A button close a game when the RetroArch menu is open instead of, closing the menu. It's the little things like that that really annoy after a while. Nobody expects a perfect operating system, but there has to be something better than this, right? In closing, the list of problems here is long. Cheap plastic, unsaturated screen, buttons that can't register diagonal inputs, average speakers, a truly hideous operating system, and I can't use my fast charger to charge it. I have to use the generic one they sent me. But in spite of the near endless list of reasons to dislike the Project X, what it gets right justifies its ludicrously low buy-in price. Playing retro 8-bit and 16-bit games on this device is a dream, despite the problems it has. On anything else, the screen ratio would look super weird, but on this device, where the main focus is old-school retro offerings, it works. Pair that with a lush style of comfort and a solid battery life of 4 to 5 hours, and for that $30 price tag, you've got a lot to be happy about. I can't see the Project X featuring in anyone's top 10 lists anytime soon, but if you're new to the scene or want to relive the classics on the cheap, this is a really good starting point. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, and if you'd like to subscribe, that would be awesome. Until next time, see ya.